Well, it finally happened. The water finally dropped out on us early part of last week. We had a little cool front push through early part of the week and dramatically changed things temperature wise. We started our week out last week. I believe it was last Saturday, Sunday. We were still in the upper 70s, low 80s. Water levels were still pretty high at that point. And after that front had came through, you could really tell that the water was dropping pretty good ripping tide on the way out. But then that next morning, man, we were at negative tide, and I thought, "Woo, that water has gone," and much chillier. That temperature dropped almost probably 12 degrees, I believe it was. So it was very drastic, which at some point we knew it was going to take place. So you just had to be prepared for that. So, but toward the end of this past week, we had gotten some of it back as we got into Saturday and Sunday. A little bit of water had come back, so it's pretty much normal what we typically have this time of year outside of fronts pushing through. It looks like this upcoming week is going to be a spectacular weather-wise. It's just temperatures in the upper 70s, low 80s. Not a whole lot of wind, it looks like. So for now, anyway. So we'll see how the week progresses. But if you get the opportunity to want to be out on the water this upcoming week, it should be pretty spectacular. So we'd fished up here in the area, Mustang Lake. It's one of the areas I like to fish all back in here because, again, when that water level or water temp dropped, those fish, they start to go, hey, we got to put a little bit more weight on because wintertime's here. Water temps being what they were. So we started moving into areas where we got a lot more mud and clump shell and grass. Again, the grass is something that's the common denominator no matter what time of year that you're going to fish. You want to make sure that you've got grass that you're fishing in and around. Now, it doesn't have to be a big old grassy flat that you're fishing potholes, but a decent amount of grass is definitely a must to help with that catching opportunities. But we slid up into here to Mustangs. We hadn't been in here any this summer just because of water temps being what they were. So after that little front push through there, we worked all these areas up here on the shoreline. Not typically very close because, again, the water being dropped out, so we're a little bit further off now. We'll probably be maybe 100, 150 yards off that shoreline so we could stay in that knee-deep, thigh-deep water. Plus, being in the mud on top of that, you sink down a little bit, and if you've been in Mustang, it's pretty mushy back in these areas. You just got great little areas that kind of push back in here. And you got a couple little back lake mouths that are back in here. You've got some scattered shell that's on that. And we located some fish in there. Nothing great, but you could definitely tell that those fish had gotten a little bit more chunky. Just a little bit wider, a little bit more stuff in their bellies because their bellies were all pretty full, stock full of little ghost minnows and little perch. All small, about a 1 inch, 1.5 inch little bait that were just gorging in there. Same with the redfish. Redfish were the same type of things, eating the same type of baits. So we pretty much stuck with our smaller profile baits, i.e. like a burner shad from down south, the mirror lure Little Johns, the Pav lures. They have a little 3.5 inch rat tail bait that we threw. The profile's pretty small on it. The little softy by Pav lures did really well for us this past week. One of the great things now with these water temps being down, I think a couple of mornings of water temps was like 62, 63 degrees, so that's pretty chilly. So yes, waders have come out. So not necessarily layering up a whole lot, but that was something that did change there. But we had some nice days that rebounded temperature-wise and got back up. But the water level or the water temps were still kind of hovering in that mid-60, upper 60s, either later in the day as the sun would beat down on it. Because, again, big old high pressure is what came in behind that when it came through. So with that said, like I say, we were kind of focusing in on these areas out here, in and around that mud, inside all the riprap here that's just off the ICW. And then we just kind of worked our way on the outside, down the ICW and worked down this whole shoreline here where you had some access to some back lake mouths that dump out in that. And we'd fish those because you got little guts, little cuts and stuff that are in that. A little bit deeper water, and those fish, that's where they were kind of starting to hold off into as that water was trying to warm back up. We fished off the edge of the ICW a little bit, caught a few fish on the edges on that as well. But these fish are going to start pushing into that transitioning, if you will, over the muddy area. So moving forward for the rest of, November, December, January, February, these are the types of areas, no matter where you're going to fish, that's what you're going to want to be hovering over. That's what you want to try to fish and locate. So, again, kind of a rule of thumb, when you got the colder water like that early in the morning, I say early in the morning, we have the time change, so that kind of messes things up. You have to kind of readjust for that. You want to fish the deeper edges first, early in the mornings, and then as the sun warms up the flatter areas or the shallower areas, and that's where that bait will start to kind of move up there on top of that as well. The game fish, trout, redfish, they'll move up into that as well. So that's our game plan moving forward, is deep water first, shallow water second. Flounder season is closed right now, but we caught a few flounder in some of these areas as well, which of course have to let those go for now anyway. But this is what we want to do. This is where we spent some time up there, and just to see what these fish were trying to do and what they were wanting to do. And that's the game plan, and it worked out pretty well for us for the most part. Wasn't great numbers of fish being caught, but there was enough there that gave us what we were information-wise, what we're really wanting to get, to see if that's what these fish are doing, and that's exactly what they're doing. So as you get out this week, make sure that you kind of make sure that you're checking those water temps in the mornings. That's very important moving forward in the wintertime, is seeing what the water temp is and kind of seeing what your weather pattern is going to be for that particular day that you get to fish. So you can give yourself the best opportunity. Again, the majors and minors were another key thing for us. We caught more of our fish in and around that time frame. So after we got probably past that third day, a little front that pushed in, the fishing picked up even better. So anyhow, that is what we were doing, and that's what we will be continue to do for the next 3 or 4 months. Up here on Long Reef Bend, we got the opportunity to fish it when the water levels were still pretty high, but then after that water level dropped, being up in here close to the shorelines, again, it was not where you wanted to be. You want to be a little further off. That bar that's out there when you get in Long Reef Bend, it's got a bunch of duck blinds that are stacked out there. There's probably, 6, 7 of them that are out there spread out all the way almost up to Jaybird. And you got that, we were fishing that outer bar. And of course, another good little area there, in which I've seen several boats fish it. We dropped our boat out here where we could and waded up into, which was all pretty shallow by the time that we got to it on this particular day. One of those big back lake mouths that go back into the flats area back behind all this Long Reef Bend area. It was all, calf or deep water or less. And there's a deeper little drop off and cut. And I'm sure if you fish this area, you know exactly where I'm talking about. That gut was holding some fish that was in there as well. Again, you got a muddier bottom. Those fish fall off into that deeper edge and deeper cut like that goes through there to those back lakes, and they just kind of stage in there. So if you got bait, which we did, we had bait working in that area back there. So it was a little patience thing, because again, we had big high pressure that was in place after that front push through. So you always want to downsize your baits on a big high pressure day. Throw something smaller, i.e. like, the burner shads, great little bait to throw, or the little softy by Pavlure. It's a great little bait to throw. So anything that was in that 4-inch or less was something that you really wanted to kind of focus in on and throw that. And that's what we had our most success with. And we had some pretty good success out there on the bar that's out here, again, like I was talking about with the duck blinds. And we just kind of worked our way down here and just found the little mouths that dump off into that. You got the Jaybird Point here, and you've got another back lake mouth in here. We kind of walked up into that to see if there's potentially some fish that were hanging in there. There was a few. Wasn't great numbers. But again, it's a patience thing after a front pushes through. Typically, the first day of a front's the most difficult, or the day that front's pushing in, because your conditions can be not really good for you. That means those days that if you're having to come across the bay system, it get kind of rocky out there. But if you take your time with it, you're okay. And then, of course, Sherman's is another back lake that I enjoy fishing a lot. And we worked both the south end of that and the north end of that, because there's, again, you got little cuts that go into Sherman's, and it shallows up pretty quick once you get into the back lake. But the mouths, like right into here, or the north entrance down into here, you've got a deeper little channel that runs back up before it shallows up. So we just worked the edges of that to see if we could find and locate fish in that, which we did. And then, of course, I loved getting down into Spalding area, Spalding Bight. You know, these back lake mouths, I fish these a lot when it's a lot colder, because all these have deep little water access points. Got good muddy bottom, got scattered shell that's in there, so it's a great staging place for those, either trout or redfish, either one. Other thing you have to take and contend for now, moving forward, is going to be duck season. So make sure that you have, depending on where you fish on any given day, make sure that you have 2 or 3 locations where if you got some duck hunters that are hanging out in those blinds, you're going to have to go somewhere else, because you definitely don't want to get peppered. And that's very, very real possibility that can happen. So that was, again, same game plan. Didn't matter what shoreline we were fishing. These were the type of areas that we were trying to get to, and just work that and see if we could locate those fish. Back here in St. Charles now, I typically do not fish St. Charles very much during the late spring, summertime, early fall. Like into August, September. For the main reason for me is because of the number of alligators are back in that area. But now, with the water temps dropping down below 70 on a consistent basis, there are much less things that you have to worry with. Those alligators do not like to be in that cold water, or cooler water, should I say. So as long as, at least for me anyway, as long as that water temps to stay, 66, 68, 65, whatever, even lower, St. Charles becomes forefront as far as fishing moving forward into the November, December, January months, because we don't have to contend with them. So areas I love to get back into here. Cavasso's probably my favorite area when it's really cold like that, because it's a nice, muddy, good shoreline. Got deeper water access to it. You got a couple of back lake mouths that dump off into that as well. And it's a good little way. Now, I know a lot of people up there on that State Highway 35, you got that ramp that's at the sand ramp that's there, and you'll see a lot of kayakers back in there sometimes. Most time, you pretty much got it to yourself. And it stays pretty protected for a north wind. Now, you got the west shoreline that's back in there too that can set up pretty well for that north wind like that. And then, of course, you get to the very back of St. Charles. It goes way in the back there. That's a real muddy area that's back in that. And so we spent a day back in there this past week, see if there was fish. Now, you have to be careful back in that area if you haven't waded that and just strictly fish from the boat, because there's 3 back lake mouths that come back in from the little tunnels that come in from the other side. Water, it's pushing water in and out of there, just based on the tides. But that mud back there on that back shoreline, it can get, knee deep in some spots. So just based on what your wading skill level is, just be careful with that back in there, because it gets really soft. And then you got lots of great shoreline. You got Salt Creek that dumps out into that area. You've got Big and Little Sharp, which is another area I like to fish. Then you got Boy Scout Camp area, that whole shoreline that sets up pretty well for you for northeast breeze in there, and you get some pretty good protection in it. So St. Charles is pushed up as far as I go in the waiting area for the warm or for the winter months. And then, of course, back in here in Cow Chip and this area back in here, this little area back here, this little slough, that thing gets super muddy. So be really careful if you're going to wade back up into that thing, because you can get yourself in some trouble back there. It is really, really muddy and soft. Then you got the lake that pumps out, and then, of course, I like this Ernest Point shoreline. It typically will hold some fish for us, and that's pretty much the areas that I really kind of like to focus on and concentrate on, because I know in any one of those locations we're going to find some fish hanging in there somewhere. So again, moving forward, depending on how many cold fronts we have start pushing through here, and if it keeps that water temp in that 60s range or maybe even lower, that's how our game plan is going to be moving forward, over mud, clump shell, grass areas like that, deep water access. It's going to be close to those types of areas. And then that's what we focus on. Again, based on what the moon phase in, we're in the big moon right now, so we're and a high pressure on top of that. Yeah, we're throwing nothing but small bait, small profiles, little softies, soft dines, little johns, burner shad, and just based on whatever your water clarity is going to be based on what your color selection is going to be for that. So I would imagine that if you're a corky person, your corky game is going to start picking up pretty well. XLs for the soft dine and soft dine XL. Probably wouldn't throw anything bigger than the XL because it's pretty decent profile bait. And we've found a few fish in here, redfish as well. Nothing great big yet, but I feel like that's coming because the fish that we have been catching, like I say, they've already put on some weight just from just eating as much as they've been eating, just seeing what we're seeing in some of the stomachs of the fish that we've kept this past week, that they're really starting to try to get that extra insulation on because they know that wintertime is upon us, and you should have some pretty spectacular days, and I wouldn't doubt one bit that you start seeing some of these big girls show up on some of these areas like that. So again, make sure you pay attention to your tide reports, water temps, and just what your weather patterns are going to be, so you really don't want to get yourself caught into a really bad situation.